What's up, world? This is kind of a response to a response video to Truth Speller's response video to someone else, I guess. It's what is the system? It's that's one of the things that I think that people argue about more than anything, even though they don't realize they're doing it. Because the system includes everything. It includes the corporate interests, the religious interests, the personal interests. The system isn't just government. We know that. The system is everything that's in play right now. And he mentioned that the whole idea was that, the system that we've created today obviously wasn't the system that, if there was an intended system, I can't say, in my personal opinion, whether or not we're where we're supposed to be as humanity. And I don't think anyone can. There are a lot of people out there who say that they don't feel like we belong in this world, or that that we were alien hybrids, or that we're out of place, or that we're constantly in sin. Whatever a person's view may be, most people seem to feel kind of out of place in the world. And it's my personal opinion that that's due to our own misfortunes, that we've caused our own problems and brought things upon ourselves due to desire. And I think this is why ancient religions and texts always addressed want and desire as being something that we need to overcome. And Buddhism is basically founded on that principle. But amidst, my thought is that sometime in history, sometime in the last few thousand years, we had many of the answers to what life was about, what we were supposed to be doing, but no one ever had a complete picture of the meaning of life. And we're not, as humans, designed to grasp the whole purpose. And anyone who thinks they will is just going to be seeking for the rest of their life. You have to be happy, comfortable with a certain degree of knowledge, and a comfort in realizing that you can't picture the whole if you're just one facet of the jewel. So, sometime in history there was a lot of knowledge that was finally organized into a structure that worked for them. And we can see this by the pyramids. I mean, those things weren't just built. Regardless, there are many arguments over who built them, why they were built, when they were built, and no one really has a monopoly. I've studied it for years, and it seems to be that people just can't figure it out. They don't know how it was done, they don't know how to replicate it, and they don't know why it was done. And as kids, we were taught, say the Discovery Channel first came out, in the late 80s, early 90s or whatever, and they started talking, they always had the shows about Egypt, and they would say, that it was a tomb for the pharaoh. And then we learned later in life that it wasn't a tomb at all, but they just determined that by one inscription. It was like graffiti, basically. There are no inscriptions in the Great Pyramid, and there wasn't a tomb, but there is a sarcophagus. Anyway, point being that at some time in history we had the ability and the capacity to pretty much create anything we wanted, and we did. And the reason they built these things was for a purpose, as well as all the pillars, all the things built around the world on ley lines, all the major churches, all these points, that at some time in history there was a grasp on these things. And sometime between then and now, the knowledge didn't get lost. It got abandoned. And that's my opinion. I know a lot of folks think that the knowledge has been suppressed, and I agree to it. I think to a degree it has been suppressed. But I think that the reason why it's been suppressed is more of a collective. It's all of our fault. When we find something that conflicts with our interests, our personal interests and our gains, we ignore it. And so when someone tells you, you shouldn't, desire money, you say, I don't. But, you want to get something nice, this and that. We all have our degree of tolerance to what we're willing to accept as being, I deserve this, or, I think that over a period of time, religion got distorted to the point where they wanted to twist it to fit, to make people like it, you can't spend your whole life trying to convince people that you're right. You can, but I think at this point in history, we have to realize that there's no point in recent history, at least within the last few thousand years, where mankind has been in complete comfort with one another and had complete tolerance and of each other's beliefs, and accepted that that was indeed okay for other people to believe other things. And rather than fight and spit in each other's faces about it, we could discuss things. And there were times in history in the Middle East where there were churches, many churches right next to each other, all different kinds, all different denominations. So even mankind at that point realized that there was no one religion that fit all, because each person is in their own environment. What it comes down to is the basic principles of belief, of what you think that the system was based on, and how did we get to where we are today from where we were then? You know, how did we get from being happy with very little to, you know, and there were always kings and there were always rulers that always desired more. I mean, there's always going to be somebody that takes more. So sometime between there and here, we found a time where we found ourselves in a kind of a bind, because science and technology started to catch up to our desires, and we were able to finally create the things we'd always wanted. We learned metallurgy. We learned how to deal with chemicals and mix different elements in order to create stronger metals, which allowed us to build bigger machines, which allowed us to build bigger, stronger weapons. And then it gets into this argument about whether or not people were designed to dominate. Was that our purpose? You know, is mankind just violent by nature? And, you know, I don't think so, but I think that we've manifested that due to our own loss of moral values and integrity. And it's really easy for someone to just sit behind their camera or their computer or whatever and complain about all the shit that they don't like in the world. But you don't hear that very often from people who have traveled the world. Reason being, because they've seen multiple cultures, they've understood that there's a lot out there, and that we should be happy for what we have, because there are some pretty fucked up places on this planet. And so the system we've put into place has been designed by us. And I see a lot of folks blaming everyone else for their problems. Blaming the government for their problems, blaming the Illuminati, or blaming the Freemasons for holding back the knowledge. And at one point, perhaps that was valid, but at this point in history, the knowledge is there. So I think that the key is that people want answers, and they want them all in a book, in a format that works for them. So they want to know, what was this suppressed information that made us happier in the past, and capable of building these giant monoliths that we can't even fathom how to do today. And what type of an understanding of the Earth's electromagnetic grid did they have in order to place these things where they did? And that's one of the big things in history. There had to be an organized structure, but this was a structure without machines and without computers. This was a worldwide system that was, over a period of thousands of years, that worked. And yes, there were wars, there were downfalls of civilizations and societies. That's just the cycle of life. But things were created. The very fact that these things were built, that the Great Pyramid was built, because that's just a fascinating thing. I mean, you just can't fathom how fascinating that thing is and how big it really is. 2 million blocks of stone. I mean, it's just fascinating. And what we have today is a disposable society, where our buildings are built as strong as possible to withstand only what we think will happen in the next, say, 100 years. And, we don't expect them to live much past that. So what we've done is we've created a completely fake system and put it in the place of the real system, whatever that may have been. And, I'm not going to try to explain or understand what they had, because I don't know, and I don't think anyone does. I mean, this is obviously one of the biggest issues we face right now, is trying to convince one another that we're right about what we've learned. And in the end, we find out we weren't right. And there's very little true information out there that's big, that's been revealed, that has affected the world in such a way that, if there was, say, a hidden chant that would get you some sort of, I don't know, special awareness, or some sort of a particular herb that you could consume that would put you in touch. Well, there are, and we talk about mushrooms and stuff like that. That's different. But then we could get into the food of the gods and the manna and the psilocybin mushrooms and all those different theories. But we want to explain this shit so bad to one another. We want to know. And this is how we get people that will defend their opinion adamantly. Even though, like, I listened to a speech from a guy the other day that talked about ancient man, okay? And how we appeared on the timeline, right? Say about 200,000 years ago, I think. Between 150 and 200,000 years ago. And our genetics really can't be traced back past that. There's kind of a dead end right there, right? And science tells us that we're connected to Lucy and all these other ancient, human-like apes. But this guy's saying that we're not. And I've heard this many times before. But after I listened to it, he was talking about how the aliens had come down and the whole Nibiru thing, how they needed gold, they'd come to our planet, they wanted to create a workforce to mine the gold so they could put it in the atmosphere, blah, 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 blah. And this is about a 60-year-old guy who's spent his life studying this stuff, and he's very convincing. And to the people who believe that, that's so true. That is what happened. That is the way it is. Of course, most of us aren't genetically, we have to trust what the geneticist tells us. We don't have a, genetic decoding machine for our own personal use. Nor can we attain the samples or assure that they're not tampered with or biased or lied about. And this is the problem that we face. We can't organize ourselves in a way that is conducive to life. So we create the system in place of it. And it's it doesn't exist. The whole thing is an illusion. It's fascinating how people believe it exists. We're the only thing that holds this system in place. So when we cast the blame on others and we cast the blame on the system is us, and that's the thing we forget so often. Why is China making cheap goods? Well, because we demand it. Why was this law passed keeping me from doing this? Well, because more people wanted it passed than didn't. So what we do is, if let's say a law is passed that we don't like, we just say that everybody else is ignorant, that those people aren't aware. And that's not right. We live in a democratic world, where majority rules, at least should, to an extent. But if 51% of people like something, it passes. And then the other 49% are stuck complaining about the system. So I think what we forget is that the system is designed for the whole and not for the individual. And when we're not gaining what we want out of it, we complain about it. And there are an elite group of people that run the banking systems and run the world. But they don't run the world. They just, I guess, give the directions. If everybody walked off the job, the boss wouldn't have anybody to finish it. And that's where we're at. We're told that this is what we're supposed to do. We're told that we're supposed to go to school, go to college, get a good paying job, pay our taxes, have kids, do our thing and die. So, before I get too far off base here, we had that guy I was talking about that had all those beliefs in that was talking about how ancient aliens had created man to mine for them and then left us here and that we don't belong. But then there's another entire separate group of people who believe that the earth is only 6,000 years old and that God just put us here in this Garden of Eden with a man and a woman under a tree. And the ancient alien theory says that man and the woman were the first genetic clones. Now, both of these sides believe adamantly what they believe. And they have for as long as I can remember. And I've seen a few people kind of be swayed one way or the other. But for the most part, there's no agreement. And I don't see an agreement happening. And this is where we set these desires in motion, where we want answers to fall out of the sky, and we want to be in contact with angels so we can know the answers and speak with the dead and blah blah on and on and on. But there's still no solid empirical evidence of any real knowledge from the past that everyone can agree on. So what do you do? I mean, you're never going to convince everyone of what you believe, and you're never going to be convinced by anyone to believe what they believe 100%. So here we are, we're learning. We're learning from one another, we're passing the lamp on as best we can, but living in this system that we've created. It's kind of like when your house gets too messy because you're sick or you don't feel well. And you say, oh, I'll clean it in the end, and then it gets just so bad, and then you see these people that end up just being hoarders and spending their whole life like that. That's how I see the world right now. We can clean house, and we can take care of business, get things back to normal. It's just a matter of getting on the page, getting the sickness gone. And that sickness that's keeping us from cleaning house is intolerance and disagreeing with one another because we want to be right about things. You know, I don't know how many people have told me that what they believe is right and that I should believe it, and that if I don't, I'm a fool. I mean, that's no way to get people to listen to you. If you want people to think that you're right, give them the evidence to show that they're right. Don't just call them names or say you're an idiot, you don't know shit, start spitting at them. You know, it doesn't do any good. This is the problem we have. It's communication. Communication. And I've said it a million times, but YouTubers, you know, have changed my view on a lot of people, a lot of Christians' behavior, there's some good Muslims out there, there's some good Jews, there's some good pieces of every type of belief system. And then there are the extremists that just want to knock you down and who laugh at you because they don't agree with what you think. Or they have some problem with your opinions because it doesn't coincide with theirs. And I think that's how we do it. That's how we clean house. That's how we stop the system. And you can talk about how to fix the world until you're red in the face. Blue in the face, isn't that right? Yeah, whatever it is. Probably get red in the face. It pisses you off. You start thinking about all the fucked up shit. And then you think, why is it this way? Why is there so much violence? Why is there so much, animosity? It's strictly intolerance. It's division. It's hate. It's beliefs that we can't prove to ourselves or to others, so we get frustrated about it. And those people who keep this illusion, these parts of this holographic, I'd say the elite would be the holographic projectors. They're the ones that say, oh, well, this system's like this, and this system's like this. This is the platform. You have to start here and work your way to here. You can't just skip around it. But, those of us who have seen through that veil know that there's ways around everything. For example, working up in a career, A person can go out, if you want to, you can go on Craigslist and see some high-paying job, apply for it, claim you have a bunch of experience, go do it, and jump yourself into a position you've never been into, if you feel capable of it. But we're trained to keep us down, to keep our egos down, like, oh, we don't have an experience for that, we're not ready for that. That's part of the illusion. The idea is to stop being intolerant of others' beliefs, because that's a waste of time and energy. It doesn't matter if they're complete idiots. If what you think they're complete idiots. If somebody is, say, a 6,000-year earther or whatever, you can still have discussions with this person and learn from them, and hopefully express to them that that's not a really realistic view. But that's just my view. See, I can't prove that it isn't or is, and neither can any of you. So when you feel something in your heart strongly and it resonates with you, follow it, but don't believe it, because I look at things like a percentage. If a large percentage of people believe something, there might be something to it. If, say, there's one small group of people, say like the video I made about the guy who didn't believe the moon was real, you could argue that, well, he might be right, but it's just not realistic. There's too much information to show that it is, and it's not worth the time to try to prove that it is or isn't. It's like, there it is. I've got other things to worry about besides whether the moon's real or the stars are pinpricks in a little blanket up in the sky. And people will defend that just as adamantly as anything else. So we just need to back away from trying to defend our point of view. And that comes to the other part, the second half, which is ego. Because having an ego and displaying an ego are two different things. You have to have an ego to be yourself. That's what makes you who you are. But when your ego is, when you start arguing with someone, it just means that either you're really irritated with them, or you know you're wrong, or you know you're really right. And either way, you can't prove it. And the other person is not going to listen unless you talk in a rational manner. So let the ego down, and even give somebody the space to say, hey, I respect your views. However, this is what I believe, and I would hope you respect that. It's really simple. I mean, that is, it's the simplest thing, because a lot of people say love is the answer, and that family is the answer, and that integrity is the answer. The answer is tolerance and drop of the ego, because with that comes everything else. You start to love. When you stop hating, it turns to love. And when you stop wanting, it turns to gain, whatever it may be. I have more luck in life when I'm not trying. And I guess what I mean by trying is trying to push myself around to get what I want. Because I stopped wanting a long time ago. I grew up like everyone else, part of the system, wanting stuff as a kid, Oh man, one day I'm going to have money. And even as a teenager, I knew that money wasn't the answer, but still I thought it'd be great to have it for a while. And so what we can do is look around at the world and learn from it. What have other people gained when they say won the lottery? Most of them have claimed to be more or less miserable. In fact, they did a happiness study where they took someone who had a major incident, like I can't remember if it was like a broken leg or something like that, or some sort of organ damage or something that was cured within a year. They took samples of someone who had just won the lottery and someone who had just got an illness, and then they took their base happiness levels, and then a year later they went back and took a sample. What was it? I think it was somebody. Whatever. In the end, they were both equally happy, or just as happy as they were the year before. Therefore, that no matter how sad you get, you'll always come back up, and no matter how happy you are, and how much of you develop a desire for stuff, and it fills your need, I know what it's like. I was addicted to Goodwill for a while. I used to go down there and just to look and buy maybe a stereo or a speaker. Into stereos, it was like, oh, I'm just gonna buy this, And I would just buy something just because of the excitement of buying it. Get into my car, throw it in the passenger seat. It was over. Didn't even want it. I could go home, buy a record, take it home and play it. Whoop-de-doo, throw it in the shelf of records. Those are the things that we learn from. And since then, I haven't bought myself anything in a couple of years. I mean, last thing I bought, I think, was a tool I needed for work. It's like, but that's just me, and that's what's worked for me. And I'm not saying that's the way for everyone, because I think that the system, if we want to keep the system working for us, we need to stop pushing each other away and stop claiming that we need more or deserve more. Because no matter how hard you work, there's always somebody that works harder, and no matter how much you have, there's always somebody that has more. And no matter how sick or hurt you are, there's always somebody that's more sick or hurt. So just be happy as being an average person in this world. And just hope that one day we can get past all this. Get past all the small stuff. And I think that we're doing it. I really do. I think that each one of us is part of this. And we're all doing a really good job of separating the rational folks from the irrational. And now we have, because I always hated computers and I always hated the internet, because it takes your mind off of real life. But now that it has the capacity to bring people together in a way that's that works, I see such an awesomeness, being able to just, if people are ridiculous or being rude, just push them out and just stick with the people that are cool. And it's just this flowing digital world of information, and we can pick and choose what we want to listen to. But if I can leave on one note, it would be that I see the system today as developing out of the whisper, what's that old thing, the whisper, where you whisper into somebody's ear and you do the thing where you go around the kindergarten room. By the time you get to the end, the story's completely changed. I think that's what happened to humanity. I think that we had the answers, and that by the time it was passed down enough generations, we lost the truth. And we're so frustrated about it that we want to cast each other into the lake of fire. But I don't. I don't. I love people for who they are, you know? It is what it is. We all get frustrated, and we all get angry with people and say things we shouldn't say. But it's okay to say you're sorry and to let it go and to be the bigger person, because it takes so much less energy. And I think if enough people started acting and behaving like adults, then whatever an adult may be, I mean, hell, I don't know if we're even supposed to be doing what we're doing at all. But it's kind of like like Truth Speller said, you know, we're part of the system. You have to raise your kids and teach them to think for themselves. But they still have to be part of the system. You can't go off and hide in a cave and teach your kids to just be artists. You know, you have to function. You have to be part of it. And society as a whole works the way it does, because not because you're the 1% that's smarter that can get away from it all. Just embrace the parts of it that work and be happy with what we have and fight for your rights if you want change. And I think we've been doing that for a long time. I get really tired of people saying they're sheeple. Everybody's asleep. Nobody knows what they're doing. People aren't aware that they're being screwed over. People do. No, majority of people understand that when they watch TV that it's programming. It's not a matter of them not being aware. It's that they don't care. And I think at least half of the people are pretty aware that the system's fucked up. You know, everybody knows somebody who's been to prison over something dumb or gone to jail for pot. And what do we do about it? We get the laws changed. I can smoke weed legally in my state now because we made enough of an effort over time to make it happen. That's what we do. We push forward and change the system. And the last thing I want to say is that I was listening to Max Eigen the other day, and he said that he was talking about something similar to this, and he said that the system we have in place cannot be you can't just throw it out the window and start all over. And that seems to be what people want to do. They want a collapse so we can rebuild the way we want. And that's just not realistic. It just can't happen. It cannot happen. You cannot have a complete world collapse of all goods and services and start over from scratch without massive loss of life. And so a lot of folks say that's what we need. You know, I had a discussion with someone, I said something about it's sad that people are still dying of malaria. And he said, well, with the world population, we need it more than ever. And we'd talk back and forth, and I didn't get heated because I understand where he's coming from. You know, the world is pretty populated. We need to figure this out. But, you know, saying disease needs to be rampant to wipe us out is just not the answer. That's defeatism. And I used to think that way. And I used to be one of those guys. I wanted to start over. I wanted society to collapse. I was waiting for that solar flare. And then I realized, you know, it doesn't take that much. You know, if you tear a house down and rebuild it and you replace the furniture, it takes a long time. If you just shift the furniture around inside, it takes a lot less work and you stay dry while you're working. That's what we can do. That's what we can do with our environment. We can start to make the changes that we want to see and stop saying, oh, well, it's too late. CO2 levels are too high. We're fucked. Let's just drive our Hummers, you know. So, can we all just get along? I mean, really. You know, since I've given up on trying to prove anything to anyone, my life has become a lot easier, you know. And although I'll still discuss my points to no end, and I don't get heated over things. I don't get mad anymore, and that's the thing. I used to get angry at people. When they would type a comment, let's say, even respond to me, or maybe an email or something, you know, like, or even a text message, even years ago, you know, you take it the wrong way and you get mad about it. But it's just not worth it. Why do I care what one person's opinion is that lives in the middle of Ohio that I've never met? If they have something to say that's worthwhile, then I'll listen. And that's all that matters. I don't have to deal with the negativity. We don't have to even cater to the negativity. And we don't have to do it in our system either. We don't have to spend so much time complaining about all the things that are wrong with the world. And that's the big issue. It's when all you see is negativity, you start to see more and more and more. And one day, and when I say one day, I mean a couple of years, one day I sat down for a couple of years, started thinking about society and the system and what we have in place here. And I thought, okay, here are the corrupt factors about our society. You know, we have greed, we have overspending from our government, and we have rich people hoarding money, and we have food waste, and we have military and corporate interests in our food and our lives and our water and everything. But you start thinking about that, and you'll think of all the bad things. But then I started thinking, well, people are also blaming everything on the government. People start blaming big storms on the government now. Supposedly now they're creating these superstorms. You know, people still believe that that hurricane last year was manufactured by HARP, and they pushed it into the shore to try to cause devastation in Wall Street, so they declare martial law. You know, don't care. I just don't care. I'm done with the whole martial law thing. It's over. I need to start thinking about what can we do to make a society where they'll never be able to instill martial law. A society where people don't need to pull out their guns to fight, or people don't, because this is the image they've created. This is all part of the system. This is part of the illusion. They've created this illusion that everything's fucked up and that we need to fight about it. And I've seen through that, and I've seen through all the bullshit, the division, the arguments. You know, we all buy into it, and we're just human. But when you start to see the positivity, you start to see the good parts about society. Like, look at what we have done for green building. Look at the way we're able to recycle chipboard and using new materials, natural materials. And we're learning, you know. We've always used wood for building houses. Then when we developed plastic, we started using it for all kinds of stuff. But now they're able to even compact cardboard and all kinds of random stuff into really good quality, like say MDF for, you know, moldings in the houses. All these little things, if we get them to a point where we're using natural products that are completely biodegradable, you know, we'll be building properly. And we're getting there. You know, 20 years ago it was unheard of. Green building, whatever. And now that's one good part, you know, that we've pushed forward. In places where they're opposed to nuclear power, they've been able to stop those plants from being built or from being active. So instead of worrying about the ones that are leaking, we can at least think about the ones that were never built. I'm just giving you an idea that there is hope. Instead of worrying about all the greedy rich people, think about all the modest people who aren't poor because they have to be, but that are just living humbly. Plenty of millionaires that live in 900 square foot houses. And I think that that's one of the hurdles we have to overcome, is to stop seeing things in black and white and stop seeing things in a negative light. Because I don't know where that comes from. You know, I don't know if humans just want to see that, if that's something inherent within us, or if it's something that we're programmed to believe. And I think the programming is a big part of it, because there's a lot to be said about the positive things that happen in the world. But we were raised on news that tells us there's rapists and killers in our neighborhood, and that there's gang warfare and riots, and then there's a tidal wave and a bunch of people died, and there's a genocide over here. And then, oh, here's a local man who gave to a cat shelter or something. You know, there's always one little happy story they throw in. And so the blame has been thrown on mainstream media for so long now. And I'm glad I remembered that, because that's another thing I wanted to say before I go. You know, I hear a lot about that, mainstream media. Mainstream media does this. Mainstream media is completely owned. It's not true. I think 80% of mainstream media is owned right now by corporate entities that are all catering to the big, whatever you want to call it, the elite. But we're still the people who determine which programs are watchable. The networks still have to put up things that we will watch. And likewise, there are still people who speak the truth, people who aren't corrupted, you know, like completely by the system. And a lot of these people get thrown out. You know, they speak their mind on a new, like, look, I can't remember, what was it, Peter Jennings? No. Whoever it was that got fired over talking shit about Bush going to Iraq. And you know, you never hear about that stuff, you know. But the information does get out there is what I'm saying. And if the media is biased, it's because we've developed it to be biased. And that's what I'm wondering, is the media negative because we love to see destruction? And I know that that's a man thing more than it is female, because male, I should say male energy, you know, masculine energy versus feminine energy. The masculine testosterone energy tends to be kind of a sucker for disaster, you know. It's the old rubbernecker syndrome. You're driving down the freeway, you see an accident, you gotta look. Why? It's a horrible thing. Why do you have to look? You've seen crashed cars, you've seen fire trucks, you've seen stopped traffic, but you still gotta look. Is anybody hurt? They got a stretcher out. Oh, you know. And whenever something big happens in the world, you know, you'll watch the video over and over and be like, oh, that's so horrible. Oh, it's like when I watched the Twin Towers video. I mean, I couldn't watch that for a while, but just the intensity of that explosion, it was such a horrific event. It was almost guilty to watch it, but you're just so fascinated by that. It's like, oh my God. What is it about explosions and catastrophes that's so fascinating? I don't know, but I think that that's where we get kind of this drive, and the media caters to us, you know. And you know, I don't want to say it's all our fault, but the more I thought about it over the years, it is our fault. And we keep casting blame, It's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's fault. You know, and I found that, and this is just my view, the people who complain the most tend to do the least and put forth the least effort in changing anything. You know, these are the couch heroes, or what would you call couch commandos, you know, sit there and type about all the fucked up shit in the world. Meanwhile, they're just sitting there getting drunk, or, you know, out with their buddies, you know, shooting pool or something. But what are you doing? You know, if you're happy with the way the world is, you can live however you want. But if you're going to complain about it in the system, you have to put forth something. You have to contribute something. And that's why the folks that do contribute something don't complain, is because they've seen good, you know. If you go out and start volunteering, let's say, with a group, you'll find a whole bunch of other volunteers that are also volunteering there. And then you start to see this good group of people doing good things, you know. And if you go out drinking and partying with some people that cause trouble, you're going to see more people cause trouble. If you live in a bad part of town, you're going to have a bad image of how the city works. If you live in the Heights, you might think that the city is a wonderful place to live. So our views are completely based on our environment, circumstance, and our ability to comprehend the world around us. And the knowledge that we all have, the knowledge that people claim is within us, and this is a big belief that there's this inherent, that everything we need to know is within us. And I think that could be altered a little bit. It's not necessarily within us, it's just accessible by us. You know, people say we're not our brains, we are the world, you know, but we are our brains. Now, our brain is our ego. Our brain is who makes us individual from other people. And we have to embrace that individuality and realize that we are the way we are for a reason. Because if everyone was the same, it wouldn't be very fun, and we wouldn't get much done. So, you know, there's some big arguments in life about, say, whether religion or atheism is true, but then there's some really mundane arguments, even within one church. You know, one person might believe a passage a certain way, another person might become enemies over one small belief in that. Or people might argue over what a symbol means. You know, no, this is a symbol for this ancient thing. No, it's a symbol for this. And they could both be right, but hate each other over it. So I think the best way to approach this is, if someone says something to you that you don't agree with, do your research before you call them an idiot. Or if you don't want to talk to the person because they seem like an idiot, then just ignore them. And Because if you can't get along, you're never going to succeed in this world. If you can't get along with, and I'm talking about succeed as in dying happy, you know, isn't that the ultimate goal, is to live your life to the best you can, to help as many people as you can, and to, when you're on your deathbed, know that you've done the best you can. And everyone could have done a little better, of course. I'm not going to say that I spend all my time doing fucking philanthropy. Hell no. I do so much selfish stuff, you know. I want to get home so I can drink my coffee and smoke a bowl and watch TV, you know. I mean, we just have to have a balance and realize that when that balance is shifted towards the good, towards the positive, the system will shift with that balance. Because if we're really as strong as we think, and the collective consciousness has as much power as we think that we should give it, why can't we all just change our minds and change the world? I mean, if you stop buying into the lies, then you cease to become part of it. You cease to feed into that system anymore, and you start to feed into another system. You break away, and you start to create another form of energy. There are a lot of us out here. You know what I'm talking about. The people who know what I'm talking about. When you develop a certain energy and think a certain way, that frequency resonates with other people, because everything is frequency. Everything's light. Everything is light. We live on light, whether we like it or know it or not. I mean, the plants use light to photosynthesize, break down, you know, the sugars, carbohydrates, and release oxygen. And then we eat the plants. Everything comes from light, but it's not. But light is just energy. So the energy is returned and recycled, and light is also transmits information. You can do your own homework on it, but they've done tests where they've shined a laser through a frog egg into a salamander egg and had a frog born from the salamander egg. They've found that light transmits information. They can take a sterile environment and transmit a virus through plexiglass into that test tube and create life, or create a virus. Life wants to form, and light transmits information. So DNA, when hit by certain cosmic rays, we don't know exactly how it works. That's how information's transferred from one person to another. Like, you don't even have to touch another person to, say, catch their cold, that kind of stuff. Now, this is just what I've studied. I'm not, you know, doing a scientific thing here. But that light energy is passed around, and it's similar to when you have two crossing, you know, like sine waves. You have frequencies where they cross and they amplify each other. And there's also opposite waves which cancel each other out. So that means if a lot of positive people and a lot of negative people, it's just going to phase each other out. The more we lean towards the positive, the more that positivity will pump itself up in that resonation and frequency. That's my belief. And it comes to the 100th monkey kind of syndrome, where, you know, enough people believe a certain way, then it changes. And it would, because the system is what we make it. This system, these borders that we've created, you know, when you picture the country in your mind, what do you see? Do you see just open land? No, you picture little cities, lines, divisions, you know, the Mississippi, okay, that divides this and this. Not everyone, of course, probably thinks that way, but I think when you have an image in your mind of what certain things are, and all of that is illusion, that the government is this group of people. No, they're all just people who go home and then they go to work, and we've put them in there to try to take care of business we don't want to deal with, so we can complain when they don't do it the way we like. So, I'm not defending the system, and I'm not defending the people who keep us down, or the people who are trying to keep us from knowing what we should know. All I'm saying is we got to take a little bit of responsibility on our own time to sit back and say, whoa, you know, we can change this without destroying it first. You know, you don't have to go back to the drawing board. We just have to change a few of the equations. And I think we're doing well. So, a lot of folks may disagree with me and may say that, no, everything is manufactured by these elite and it's out of our control completely. I don't believe that. I think that if you and you and you can talk to them and them and them, and each person can try to open another person's mind a little bit to the illusion. We can at least plant seeds in a person's mind to make them think, because my goal in life is not to, or my goal in making videos is never to sway anyone or change anyone's opinion. I have no goal except for to simply express some thoughts that I have in hopes that I can get some good responses and learn more, because I'm humble. I'm not too proud, and I don't think that I have this shit figured out, because I sure as hell don't, and I won't ever. Like someone made a comment about going through the cycle, the 12 steps, and doing the cycle all over again. And you could relate that to many different things, but there are many cycles that you learn, and you go through phases, and then you get to a point where you realize, oh, that was bullshit, and you start over again. You work your way up. And it wasn't bullshit, it was a step up. It was a learning curve. And sometimes I think people just give up. They've had it with building up their beliefs to have them crushed. And so they just stick with one and push everybody else away that doesn't think the same way. And that's how we get dogma in religion. You know, you can't make a person think. Don't think. No, thinking's bad. You know, these are the same folk that say reading is bad or make fun of books. It's ludicrous to me. I mean, books are our heritage. This is, you know, and there are many who would like you not to learn, and that's their own choice. But I encourage everyone to learn as much as possible, because I think that the more we learn, the more we see through the illusion and realize that we can manipulate it. And I'm going to do the damnedest I can in my lifetime to see this ship get turned around and back on course, because we're headed to utter destruction in the world we live in right now if we continue on the path that we're on. When the oil's depleted, we should be okay as long as we start weaning now. But we won't. I shouldn't say that. We won't. I should say that I hope we will. But with that would take a lot of change. And that's what I'm saying. It's not one of those things where you can just go out and build electric cars. This is a thing environmentalists a lot of the times don't get it. They're like, everybody's driving oil-burning cars. Well, you can't just go out and buy an electric car, and even if you do, how do they make that electricity? Burning fuels, you know, it takes power. So we could go with the solar car. Well, you still have to manufacture these things. And then it's just more fuel to fuel the kilns to make the metal. I mean, everything takes money. You could retrofit some cars, but, you know, with certain, burning engines, and there are many, like a hydrogen engine, you know, where you can separate hydrogen from the seawater. But these things are just not practical right now. They're able to be put into action, and they are being, but it's going to take many years to get back on our feet. So for now, we've just got to do the best we can with what we have and not feel defeated, because fossil fuels are not our biggest problem right now, although they are a damn big problem. Nature will curtail that shit pretty quick, and I think that I better just stop now, because I could go on forever. So much to talk about in this world. And I've probably already spent 40 minutes or something. This is going to be a short video, but aren't they always? So, to all the people who made it to the end of this video, right on, if anybody. I hope that you will make your best effort to try to pass on the idea that it's okay to discuss things. If you're uncomfortable with the belief, it's still okay to discuss them. And that's, you know, I never closed my mind. Since I don't close my ears to Christians, I learn a lot more about the Bible. I never would have used the Bible the way I do now for archetypes and symbology if I hadn't talked with Christians who had studied it. And I'm not a Bible person. I just utilize parts of it when I'm trying to understand something, and I say, hey, I wonder if this means this. But I've heard 10, 20, 30 interpretations for any one part of the Bible. I'm also, interested in the Quran, and the Bhagavad Gita, and Kabbalah, whatever. Everybody has their own view, and I think that each one of them has a little bit something that you can gain from it. And so if you're closed off to new ideas, then you've already lost. And we have to be rational, but we can't believe everything we hear. And there are plenty of people who do, but you also can't believe everything you feel, because your body has a natural tendency to block everything out and see what it wants to see. So that's why we have confirmation. You know, you live by yourself, you can go delusional, start thinking you're seeing things you aren't. Unless you have someone there to confirm that, you don't know. That's why we talk. That's why we're here. So, peace out, everybody. And it's a wonderful life. Don't forget it. And when you're walking around every day and you find yourself frowning or squinting or frustrated, stop. Look at the world around you. Realize how fucking awesome it is. Peace out.